My name is Tyler. I'm 25 years old, and I need to tell you about my job as a night Uber driver that turned into ferrying dead people to the afterlife. What started as easy money driving drunk people home became me discovering that I have the ability to see and transport souls who don't know they're dead. 4 months ago, I started driving for Uber exclusively during the night shift, 11 p.m. to 6 a.m. The pay was better. Surge pricing was almost guaranteed, and I figured drunk people would be easy passengers who just want to get home safely. I was partially right about that last part. They did just want to get home. The problem was most of them didn't have homes anymore because they were dead. The first time I picked up a dead passenger, I didn't realize what was happening. Her name was Sarah, and she got into my car at 3:17 a.m. outside a downtown hospital. She was wearing a hospital gown and seemed disoriented, asking to be taken to an address that turned out to be a cemetery. "I just need to get home," she kept saying during the ride. "I've been away for so long. My family must be worried sick." She looked pale and exhausted, which I attributed to whatever medical treatment she'd been receiving. When we arrived at Greenwood Cemetery, she thanked me, paid through the app, and walked through the locked gates as if they weren't there. I thought I was seeing things due to fatigue, but the next morning I looked up her name online. Sarah Mitchell had died 3 days earlier from complications during surgery. The obituary included her photo, the same woman I had driven to the cemetery. I convinced myself it was a coincidence, maybe a relative with the same name. But over the next few weeks, it kept happening. Passengers who seemed confused about where they were, who wanted to go to locations that turned out to be funeral homes, cemeteries, or their childhood homes where other families now lived. When I started researching my passengers, I discovered they had all died recently. Car accidents, heart attacks, overdoses, medical complications. They were all people who had died suddenly or unexpectedly, who hadn't had time to understand what had happened to them. The rides always happened between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. The passengers were always confused but polite, often talking about how they needed to get back to their families or how they'd been away for such a long time. They never seemed to notice anything strange about passing through locked doors or walking into restricted areas. After my 5th or 6th dead passenger, I started getting ride requests from a user named Transit Authority with no profile picture. These rides always came with special instructions. Passenger requires discreet service. Destination will be provided during ride. Payment guaranteed. The first Transit Authority pickup was outside a morgue at 4:23 a.m. The passenger was an elderly man named George who had died of a heart attack 2 days earlier. Unlike my other dead passengers, George seemed to know something was different. "You can see me, can't you?" he asked as soon as he got in the car. "Most people can't. They walk right through me like I'm not there." I admitted that yes, I could see him clearly. George explained that he had been trying to get home since he died, but he couldn't figure out how to get there. "Everything looks different when you're dead," he said. "The world doesn't make the same sense." He asked me to drive him to a specific location. Not his home, but a place he described as where I'm supposed to go next. It turned out to be an old church that had been abandoned for decades, but when George got out of the car, the building looked new and full of light. "Thank you," he said before walking into the church. "I've been lost for so long. You're the first person who could help me find my way." That's when I realized I wasn't just an Uber driver anymore. I was some kind of psychopomp, a guide who helps souls transition to whatever comes after death. The Transit Authority rides became more frequent. I would get requests to pick up souls from hospitals, accident scenes, crime scenes, anywhere people had died suddenly and become lost between worlds. My job was to drive them to their final destinations, churches, natural areas, or sometimes just places that held special meaning to them. The pay was incredible. Each Transit Authority ride paid $500, no matter how short the distance. But more than that, I was helping people find peace. These souls had been wandering confused and alone, and I was their guide to whatever came next. But after 2 months of ferrying dead passengers, I started receiving different kinds of messages from Transit Authority. Instead of pickup requests, I got job offers. "Your services have been exceptional," one message read. "We would like to offer you a permanent position with enhanced benefits." Please respond if interested in transitioning to full-time spiritual transport services. I ignored these messages at first, but they became more insistent. Tyler, your unique abilities are rare and valuable. We have a position that would fully utilize your talents. The transition process is simple and painless. When I looked up Transit Authority online, I found nothing. No company registration, no website, no contact information. But I did find forum posts from other drivers who claim to have received similar offers. Don't take the job, one post warned. I know a guy who accepted their permanent position. He's been missing for 6 months. But people say they still see his car driving around at night with no one behind the wheel. Another post was more ominous. Transit Authority isn't a rideshare company. They're recruiters for the afterlife. Once you accept their permanent position, you become like the passengers you've been driving, dead but still working. I realized that Transit Authority had been testing me, seeing if I could handle transporting dead souls. Now they wanted me to join them permanently, to become a ghost driver who ferries other souls for eternity. The final message I received from them was clear. Tyler, you have been selected for immediate transition to permanent spiritual transport services. Report to coordinates provided for processing. Failure to comply will result in automatic enrollment. They were going to kill me and turn me into one of their ghost drivers, whether I wanted the job or not. I tried to stop driving for Uber, but every night my car would start by itself and drive to pick up locations. I would find myself behind the wheel with no memory of getting there, with dead passengers who needed to get to their final destinations. The souls started recognizing me as something different too. "You're still alive," one of them said during a ride. That's unusual for drivers on this route. Most of the guides are already dead. I learned that there's an entire network of ghost drivers working for Transit Authority, transporting souls who died suddenly or violently and became lost. These drivers had all been recruited the same way I was being recruited, by proving they could see and interact with the dead. The difference was they had all accepted the permanent position. They had all died and become part of the spirit world's transportation system. My breaking point came when I picked up a passenger who looked exactly like me. Same face, same voice, same mannerisms. But he was translucent and cold to the touch. "You're going to become me," he said matter-of-factly. I was a night driver too, until Transit Authority recruited me. Now I drive the routes you can't handle yet, the ones where passengers need to go to darker places. He explained that there are different levels of spiritual transport. New drivers like me handle recently deceased souls who need to find peace. More experienced drivers transport souls to judgment or punishment. The permanent drivers handle the worst cases, souls so lost or damaged that they need to be taken to places where they can be contained or destroyed. "It's not a bad job," my doppelganger said. "You don't need to eat, sleep, or worry about money anymore. And you're helping people, in a way. The only downside is that you're dead." I knew I had to escape before Transit Authority completed my transition. I started researching protection methods, salt circles, religious symbols, iron objects. I learned that certain locations are protected from spiritual entities. Churches during services, hospitals during daylight hours, police stations. But every night, my car would still start by itself. Every night, I would find myself driving dead passengers to their final destinations. The line between my will and Transit Authority's control was disappearing. The final confrontation came when I received a pickup request from my own address. When I arrived at my apartment building, I was waiting for myself on the sidewalk. But this version of me was pale, translucent, and wearing the same clothes I had died in during a car accident that apparently happened yesterday. "Time to switch places," dead me said, getting into the passenger seat. "I've been waiting for you to finish the transition process. You're officially dead now, which means you can start your permanent position." I looked at my hands and realized they were becoming transparent. I could feel my body temperature dropping and my heartbeat slowing. Transit Authority had been slowly killing me over the past months, taking pieces of my life force every time I transported a soul. In desperation, I drove to the one place I thought might offer protection, the church where I had dropped off George, my first Transit Authority passenger. As soon as I stepped onto the church grounds, I felt solid again. My transparency faded, and my heartbeat returned to normal. The dead version of myself couldn't follow me onto consecrated ground. He sat in the car, waiting patiently, occasionally checking his phone for new ride requests. I spent 3 days in that church, researching protection methods and trying to figure out how to break free from transit authorities' control. The pastor, Father Martinez, believed my story because he'd been dealing with spiritual problems for decades. They can't force you to work for them, he said, but they've invested too much in training you to let you go easily. You're going to have to prove that you're no longer useful to them. His solution was extreme, but effective. I had to fake my own death in a way that would make transit authority think I was no longer capable of seeing or transporting souls. We staged a car accident where I appeared to suffer severe head trauma. Then I was secretly moved to a protected location where I could recover. The plan worked. Transit authority stopped sending me ride requests, and my car stopped starting by itself. The dead version of me disappeared, presumably reassigned to a different case. But I learned something important during those months as a supernatural Uber driver. There are lost souls everywhere, people who died suddenly and don't understand what happened to them. They're looking for help, for someone who can see them and guide them to whatever comes next. I still help them sometimes, but now I do it on my own terms. I volunteer at hospitals and nursing homes, helping souls who are ready to transition find their way to peace. I don't work for Transit Authority anymore, but I use the abilities they awaken in me to help people for the right reasons. If you ever drive late at night and pick up passengers who seem confused about where they are or where they're going, pay attention. If they want to go to cemeteries, funeral homes, or abandoned buildings, you might be transporting someone who needs help finding their way to the afterlife. Just be careful not to get too good at it, because there are organizations out there that recruit people with these abilities, and their job offers come with permanent consequences. And if you ever get ride requests from Transit Authority with guaranteed payment and mysterious passengers, decline them immediately. Some jobs are literally to die for, and they want to keep you working long after your heart stops beating. The dead need guides to help them find peace. But make sure you stay among the living while you're doing it.